This is part three of a three-part discussion concerning 112 through 118 West Main Street in Troy, Ohio. Before I get started on this final part, I want to talk very briefly about the National Register of Historic Places. There are protections or lack thereof, and I think I should present that so people understand what getting on the National Register of Historic Places or creating a historic district will really do. First of all, getting a property listed on the National Register of Historic Places essentially just honors the property by recognizing the importance of the building or the district to a community, to the state, and to the nation. If you're on the National Register, federal agencies who are going to be doing projects will have to give the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation the opportunity to comment on the project and its effects on the property. If you have a building within a district or on the National Register, you can obtain historic preservation funding or federal investment tax credits. Private owners are not obligated to open their properties to the public. Private property owners are not obligated to restore or maintain their property. In fact, private property owners can do anything they wish provided no federal license, permit, or funding is involved, including raising the property. If there are state or local grants and tax programs, projects are typically eligible for this. So part three is where's the funding for preserving the Oddfellows building? Funding the rehabilitation of an older building can be daunting. There are limited funding sources for restoring older buildings. One source is historic tax credits, however they come with strings attached. There are two other major strings that will limit a building owner from applying for available historic tax credits. While I worked on 121 Public Square, we actually didn't use any tax credits. We were provided a community development block grant, which is federal funds that local jurisdictions such as the city of Troy or Miami County can direct towards projects that meet certain standards. One of those are projects involving nonprofits like homeless shelters and domestic violence shelters. It also can address accessibility, and it can also address historic preservation. I worked on that grant application, and we took that money and we leveraged it to get a larger grant under the state of Ohio grant for state of Ohio grant for homeless shelters, and that's how that building was restored. One common source of funding is the 20% Federal Rehabilitation Investment Tax Credit Program. This program is administered by the National Park Service and the Internal Revenue Service. As it sounds in its title, any owner of a building that rehabilitates or reuses a historic building may apply for a 20% tax credit on their annual tax return. However, this is a big however, the building must be a certified historic structure. A building must meet one of the following criteria to be considered a certified historic structure. It has to be individually listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It has to be a building that contributes to the National Register of Historic Places listed historic district. The property contributes to a National Park Service designated certified historic district, or the property is individually listed by a certified local government to a certified local government designated historic district. The city of Troy is not a certified local government. Therefore, in Troy, only buildings meeting the first three criteria are eligible for the 20% Federal Rehabilitation Investment Tax Credit Program. The Oddfellows building does not meet any of the three listed criteria and therefore is not eligible for the 20% Federal Rehabilitation Investment Tax Credit Program. There's a second tax credit program administered by the Ohio Department of Development. The Ohio Historic Preservation Tax Credit Program is a competitive program that will award tax credits to projects. These awards occur every March and September. the Dayton Arcade has been a recipient of these tax credits. Again, a building or a project submitted for an Ohio Historic Preservation Tax Credit Program must be a certified historic structure. The Ohio definition of a historic building can be found in section 149.311 of the Ohio Revised Code. That definition is exactly the same as the definition used for the 20% federal tax credit. Again, the Oddfellows building doesn't meet any of the four listed criteria and therefore is not eligible for the Ohio Historic Preservation Tax Credit. That doesn't mean in the future, if there is a district created around this building, it may or may not be eligible for that credit. So again, the Oddfellow building doesn't meet the three criteria to apply for the Ohio Historic Preservation Tax Credit Program. The second string that is attached to historic tax credits is that all the work must comply with the Secretary of the Interior standard for rehabilitation. The work will be reviewed by both the State Historic Preservation Office and the National Park Service. This means that historic features must be maintained, repaired, preserved, and restored. These features can range from interior finishes like tin ceilings to windows to doors, floor finishes, important structural elements, and so on. To be blunt, there are not a lot of building owners that want to comply with these standards. So while local preservation-minded individuals continue to tout the concept that the Oddfellows building can be restored using historic tax credit, that funding isn't available to the Oddfellows building. The Oddfellows building is a mishmash of structures that includes the fragment of the 1841 courthouse, the Oddfellows addition, and multiple little additions to fill in the various voids between the major building and its neighbors. No one wants to see it removed from the urban fabric of West Main Street. It would be like having a missing tooth in the smile of the streetscape. While saving existing facades of older historic buildings has become fashionable in major cities such as Seattle, is this facade of this building worthy of salvaging as one writer proposed? Personally, I'm not a fan of death mask architecture, nor am I a fan of creating geriatric villages of relocated older buildings. Just down the road in Oxford, Ohio, we can find many examples of new modern buildings being constructed within a historic downtown, including a hotel, parking garage, new restaurants, and apartments. The buildings we see in downtown Troy today replaced earlier buildings that had either outlived their use and were replaced with better designed and better constructed buildings. And frankly, that's a good thing. In an essay entitled Rethinking Historic Preservation, Chicago architect Philip Best ponders the question, once built, is every building a landmark? To this architecture and preservationist, the answer is no. So the building as we see it today provides no high public purpose to Troy. Replacing it with a modern commercial building that can meet the needs of new restaurants, shops, office space, or even a boutique hotel would be a major economic investment in downtown Troy.